What happened to this game?
It launched with like a tournament series, and a bunch of games that came out in that era kind of had that marketing strategy. It's just a flawed strategy.
Oh, interesting.
Games need a casual player base to succeed, and then the tournament system has to like organically grow out of that. And when you start by like just appealing to spikes, and those are the first people who play your game, it gets really hard for casual players to like get involved.
The following conversations with Sam Black, Magic player, brewer, limited genius, and just all-around creative personality. It's easy to stereotype Sam when you think about his accomplishments, such as having 3 Pro Tour top 8s. But in this conversation, I'm hoping to reveal a bit more of Sam, who he is, and just get right into the various sides of his Magic playing personality. The fact that Sam really is manifesting how he problem solves and how he thinks about life, how he conducts life in terms of optionality through a vessel called Magic the Gathering. It's a really fun conversation. I really credit Sam for willing to go into all kinds of unexpected, wonderful places in terms of topics. And I think this will give you a new outlook on who Sam Black is as a person, Magic player, and yeah, just a lot of fun, a fun conversation. Before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to the Humans of Magic Patreon, or should I say plug. The Humans of Magic Patreon is one of the best ways to support the show. You can find it at patreon.com/humansofmagic. There are a couple of different tiers, but regardless of which tier you pick, it is going to be the best way to financially support this show, a show that I do part-time, a show that's a labor of love, and a show that could really use your support to get to the next level. And I want to put out more episodes. I want to try different things. I want to update the production values. I want to get more great content out there into the world that you can enjoy listening to in terms of having the best one-on-one personal conversations about mindset and creativity with folks in the Magic the Gathering community. That's my absolute mission since day one, and I think I'm getting better at it, but I definitely need your help to get it to the next level in terms of making it more feasible to put out more high quality productions at a higher frequency. So please consider joining the Humans of Magic Patreon. It is going to be something that will help fuel exactly what I'm trying to do to get to the next stage. Thank you for listening, and let's get to the episode. Hey, Sam, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. I'm recovering from Vegas. I got back in Madison less than 24 hours ago, and wasn't able to sleep much at any point while I was there, and my return plans weren't quite what I'd expected. I missed a flight, and then I like thought that there would be a bus, that there wasn't, and it was some travel, woes, I suppose, but nothing serious. Bit of a sore throat, which will happen after not sleeping for 5 days or whatever. But I assume I'll be all right.
Yeah, what's the thing that kept you excited? Because I think you tweeted about that. The littlest thing, that's not even a word, the smallest thing could make you excited or excitable, right? What was it?
I mean, it's almost like, it's really just like, I don't know, anything. I'll just, I don't know. I mean, I guess my first distinct memory of having this experience was before, I would guess, the second time I went to Gen Con. The first time I went to Gen Con was 94. And I didn't have, I had, learned to play Magic a few months earlier and had never heard of anything like it, didn't know what to expect. And then I went, and it was a giant convention full of gamers, and I didn't know that was a thing. And, that was like everything I could want in life at that age. And so then like knowing what to expect the next time I was going to go, I was just like so excited to like go back to this like thing. as a kid, I didn't have the ability to like travel far for conventions, but Gen Con was like under 2 hours away. So I was able to go to that. And, so the night before, it's like, okay, I know I'm going to have like a super full day, so I should be sure to like get a good night's sleep. But I'm so excited about this full day I'm going to have. And I don't know, ever since then, like it just comes up a lot. Like sometimes I'm lucky and I can sleep before a pro tour or something, but I wouldn't say I have a good track record overall. And so, um, yeah, I don't know. Could be like it was a mix at different times. It's like interesting conversations I had, looking forward to things that were happening the next day. Um, but historically, it could be anything or nothing. Like sometimes I don't know. It's just like general. Like I mean, sometimes it's really just like it matters to me that I sleep now, and then that's like enough that I can't.
So you give yourself an ultimatum or decree, and it just works.
No, nothing works.
Well, you also mentioned Gen Con. I mean, going the second time as a kid, I presume still.
Yeah, I went like every year throughout.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time you didn't have any expectations. So when you go subsequent times, did you build up some sort of expectation? Were they met? Did you think that way, or like how?
Yeah, no. I mean, I would say that like it's easy to like really hype something up that you haven't done and like get unrealistic expectations, but like Gen Con's a pretty consistent thing that it is. So it was pretty easy for it to like meet my expectations. I'm easy. Like I expected it to be like a lot of the thing that it is, and it was that. So like events in general, like I've at this point I've been to like so many, so many, that like I don't know the I'm never going to be like particularly disappointed or anything. It's just they go the way they go, and it's pretty understood.
Sure. Although, having said all that, it feels like you have a little bit of an edge just having done those sorts of conventions or travel to conventions in the past. Like, is that something that you went on your own? I presume your parents took you, or I mean, what was that experience?
I think the early Gen Cons that I went to was actually like I grew up playing Magic with like my best friend who lived down the street. Like his older brother taught us how to play, and I think like their parents took us because they had more kids who were into gaming.
Okay. And was Magic? So I have to admit, even as of right now, I've never been to a Gen Con. Obviously, it's legendary. Is this still being held in Milwaukee? Is that
No? It was held in Milwaukee like until 2000 something.
Okay.
And then it moved to Indianapolis, and it's still in Indianapolis.
Got it.
And like, so the first time I went, in '94, that was 1 year after Magic had come out at the previous Gen Con. And so it's not like Gen Con is like a Magic convention, right? Like it's a gaming convention.
Not by any means.
And so like Magic was just like a thing that was there. And like these days, it has like pastimes running events, and it ends up going pretty similarly to like side events at a Grand Prix or whatever. And they try to have some like more like some kind of like marquee events, I guess. In '94, actually, the World Championships was held there, like the first Magic Worlds, which I actually saw, but had no idea at the time that that's what I was looking at.
Right.
It was like in an area that was kind of like roped off, and I just like passed it in a hallway, and I didn't even know they were playing Magic. Like I could see cards on a table, but the cards didn't look like the Magic cards that I was used to, because there were like all these like weird big jewels that I'd never seen before. And then once I learned about Moxes and learned that the World Championships was there, I put two and two together and figured out that's what I'd walked past.
Sure.
But my my first Gen Con, I remember more like someone had like this mega chess game that they were like demoing, where they just like put 4 chessboards together, and It had like some special rules, and I watched someone who just like was running an event where they just like handed a couple of tubs of Play-Doh to all the people who participated, and they were like, just like make some kind of like monster or like mech or like something, some kind of fighter. And then they had like a sheet of like, okay, if it has this characteristic, it has like these abilities. And then they played like a, just like a minis battle game with like the clay mechs or the clay like monsters they made, or the Play-Doh monsters they made. And like, so the early Gen Cons that I went to, just based on like where I was in terms of like life and the stuff I was interested in and the novelty of it all, like the early Gen Cons for me were a lot more like demoing different games and kind of like watching the different stuff people were doing in the gaming space. Whereas like when I've gone in like the late 90s and into adulthood, mostly like I would say mostly after it moved to Indianapolis, it was a lot more like, okay, now there are some tournaments that have like real prizes, and Gen Con's like a pretty casual space, or like casual, like it doesn't, there's not like a Grand Prix or something. There's not like a huge event that like brings out the pros. And so like the tournaments at Gen Con are really just like some of the like softest big tournaments that exist. And
Right.
so there were like many years where like I would go to Gen Con, and like throughout various like weird events that were there, one way or another, I'd end up winning, $1,000 or more somehow.
Right.
And
Right.
there were just like a lot of years in a row that like went that way.
Yeah. So kind of the wandering gamer, and were they all what $1,000 here and there? Were they all Magic related, or did you play other things
No,
too?
I mean, like, it's a mix. So honestly, like the way that I think kind of like the most important thing that happened for me outside of Magic to like becoming a consistent Magic pro was Gen Con 2006. Wizards released a miniatures game called Dreamblade, that I found out about because I owned like an LGS at the time, and someone who was like a Wizards delegate came by to be like, "Hey, there's this game that's launching. I want to like show it to you, and maybe your store can promote it. And there's going to be like this tournament." And so like I demoed it early, and then my roommate and I just like practiced it like a lot, and like figured it out. And it's like a really like complex counterintuitive game, and so like having that like extra like really serious testing work into it before it released gave us like a huge edge. And
Mm.
so I ended up winning the like launch tournament at Gen Con, and then like Wizards launched it with like a Grand Prix network and PTQ system basically. It's just like there were like $500 tournaments at like local stores all over, and then $10,000 tournaments like at varying locations around the U.S. So since I won the first one, it was like, okay, I seem pretty good at this. I went to the first like 10K, and my roommate and I played in the finals. Um,
The
and
two of you.
and then like I won that match. So then I'd won the first two tournaments that happened.
Hmm.
And so then I started like writing for Wizards about the game, and kind of became like the most established like Dreamblade pro. And so then like anyone who was like studying the game and like going to like I went to all the tournaments after that, and you know I was like the Finkel of Dreamblade or whatever, where like the people there knew who I was and expected that I would win.
Mm.
And so like a year of doing that, the game stopped existing after a year, but like a year of just like being the guy in tournaments, and playing a lot of like high stakes matches, led to just like, okay, now like my like expectations and mental game are just at a professional level. Like I've had this experience, and like now I just like don't feel pressure in matches anymore. Um,
Okay.
and so I kind of got to like punch above my weight class in a different arena and then like carry those skills back into Magic. And so like basically right after that, so like that was 2006 to 2007, and then like my first pro tour had been in 2005, and the last pro tour that I didn't play was in 2008.
Okay. Before going back to Magic topics, like what happened to this game? Why did it die after a year? Is it because Sam Black and his friend broke it and it was just unbalanced? It was an unbalanced mess, or
It's
was it
not that it
something
was
else?
unbalanced. It's that it was too skill testing and counterintuitive.
Oh, okay. So it's just not friendly to any like friendly or casual
Right. It was
type of
too. It
players.
was like so at Magic tournaments. After the tournament, people just want to draft, right? Like, I mean, sometimes people will do other stuff, go to karaoke or whatever. But like a lot of people are like, okay, we finished a day playing Magic, let's draft, or let's play more Magic in some capacity. Let's play Commander or whatever. Dreamblade, I don't know that I saw more than one casual game of Dreamblade happen at a Dreamblade tournament ever. And the people who played it loved the game, but it
Right.
was just so mentally taxing to play that everyone was just like, I want to relax now. And so the game was just like too intense, and the flavor and theme were kind of like weird and not based on any like known IP and kind of scattered and all over the place. And so it struggled to find a casual market like at all. And you like the other thing is like it launched with like a tournament series. And a bunch of games that came out in that era kind of had that marketing strategy. The versus game, the versus system, I should say, and the spoils, and a few others, and it's just a flawed strategy.
Oh, interesting.
Games are need a casual player base to succeed, and then the tournament system has to like organically grow out of that. Um, and when you start by like just appealing to spikes, and those are the first people who play your game, it gets really hard for casual players to like get involved because like there are people ready to take their lunch money whenever they like try to play in public. And you know, all of the games that came out were all like, oh, let's try to make a better tournament game than Magic. Let's make something like more like difficult, more skill testing. Let's like remove like lands because they create too much variance. And it's just like, how many people are like, you just don't understand your target audience. Like, you're not gonna like sell to enough different people if this is your focus. And like,
So kind of drawing the wrong conclusions in a way from Magic. Because
yeah,
all these designs were very much inspired by Magic, right? Because Magic was the first, tournament wise too.
yeah. And it's like, oh, you know, all these cards are worth a lot because like people need them for tournaments. So like, let's have a tournament and then our cards will be worth a lot. But it's
Right.
like, yeah, but if
Let's
your
have a lot
cards
of
are
money in the game because for tournaments, because that brings legitimacy, right? That brings
right,
people.
but like
Yeah.
if your cards are worth a lot because people need them for tournaments, but you don't have a casual scene, it just makes it so like the barrier to entry in competition is hard because you've like attracted all these pros. The barrier to entry in collecting is hard because you've made your cards expensive, and so you just never get like the grassroots thing that is like necessary. Like that's what matters. Um, so it's I don't know, like cart before the horse basically.
Yeah.
And like several different companies needed to like spectacularly fail before people kind of like changed their approach. And then I kind of feel like, you know, 10, 15 years later, everyone just like forgot that lesson and tried doing it again.
Sure.
Artifact,
Human nature, right? Yeah.
yeah. And so I don't know. Every time I like see some game where it's like, we have this new game, here's this like big tournament
No
series.
lands. Play your cards face down, you know? It's there's
Yeah.
no variance. Yes, let's make it more
Yeah.
like chess. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of very well explored traps that like not everyone's been around long enough to know that we've people have gone down that road and it doesn't work for a reason.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yes, that was what happened with that game. It was just the wrong marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now going back to Magic, you started in '94 when you were 12 years old. You said a
11,
few months
yeah.
before your first Gen Con, and then you didn't hit your first Pro Tour until 2005. So were you just playing nonstop during that like what? Maybe this is more a question like describe young Sam Black.
How did it
like,
take you? You're so good at Magic now.
Yeah, I know.
Why
Like,
were you on the
weren't you
pressure
just
as a
born
kid?
with PT top 8 in your mouth or something? I don't know what's the analogy, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So,
what happened in those 10 years?
well, so I mean, my the first time I played a tournament was like about a year after I started playing when I found out the tournaments existed. Like so I started like just playing with my group of friends who learned to play together, and I didn't know anyone else who played. And then so I think I learned to play in May. It might have been like late April or something. And that summer, some of my friends and I were doing this like summer school thing that was uh, like not like it was just yeah, it was at a school, a summer program where you could like sign up for special classes like for fun basically. And so one of the classes that I was taking was a class about games. And I was like, oh, cool, a thing where they'll teach me about games. I love games. Um, and so a bunch of us had just started playing Magic when we were in this class, and we were like, ask the teacher like, hey, there's this cool game that we learned recently. Can we like, teach the class about it? And so that class ended up playing a lot of Magic, and so I like met some other people, or I started to know some more people who played Magic from that, and then uh, there was like this youth center in my town where like kids in junior high and high school could go, and they had like ping pong tables and some arcades and pool tables and like these like TVs that had like consoles games that were hooked up to them that you could like check out and play for like a while. And then they just had like some tables, and like that became like a place that like kids went to play Magic. And so I met someone there who told me about tournaments, and I was like, "Oh, there are tournaments. Well, I should go to one of those because, I play more than like my other friends. Like the reason I started playing like at like the youth center rather than just like at my friend's house was my friends only wanted to play sometimes, and I wanted to play all the time. Um, and so then I went to a tournament, and I discovered that like tournaments were a way to find more people who played, and I've kind of like half joke, mostly serious, that like every decision I've made in my life has been primarily motivated by like how can I play more paper Magic. And so like the reason that I got into playing tournaments in the first place was like I wanted to play more than my friends did, so I needed to find more people to play with, and like the way to find strangers was to play tournaments. Because there weren't like there wasn't the infrastructure where like an LGS could like have Magic be its main thing, and they would just like have a bunch of tables and people could like go there whenever and find other people who were playing Magic. Maybe like at Neutral Ground in New York, but like nowhere near where I was.
Right.
And so the only time I could like go to a store and there would be like new people there who were playing was if they organized an event. And then yeah, so for a very, very long time, tournaments were the way to play more paper Magic. So jumping ahead, 30 years or whatever to now, I haven't been focusing on the competitive side as much because I've like found a group of players locally who want to play competitive Commander like every day. And if I were to like try to focus on like tournaments, the tournaments that would involve like preparing for say like Modern and then like going to RCQs and playing Modern. But like I don't know people who want to just like casually play Modern on the weekdays to prepare for these events. So I would only be able to play if my thing was like playing Modern, I would only be able to do that on like when there were Modern tournaments. And that's less often than I can play Commander. And so like now tournaments aren't like it would cost me opportunity to play paper Magic to like take Modern seriously, because to do that I'd have to play online because I wouldn't be able to find enough live games. And I just like live games so much more than I like online games. that like I'm just like, well, the way to play the most Magic now is just play Commander, and then like go to like other tournaments sometimes and don't really try very hard. Um, and so that's what I do now, because it's all just, yeah. But how many hours of paper Magic? That's the bottom
Yeah.
line.
Yeah. Optimize for that. Sure.
Yeah.
There's 2 points about what you said that I just want to quickly call out. Like, one, we talked about before this recording about how we're around the same age, and growing up in the 90s and learning Magic and also other card games at that time. It is very relatable what you're saying. The fact that there was no infrastructure other than tournaments. So I was really into the Star Wars CCG in the 90s. And I played regionals, I played all the qualifiers, I played tournaments every week because that was the only way that you could play the game. Like,
Yeah.
other than reading about it in a magazine. By the way, shout out to the Duelist. I think that was the first time I actually heard about Star Wars. Was like there was an article that they wrote about the Star Wars CCG by the designers. Anyways, like that's the only way that you could play. So like I would get my mom to take me every weekend. That's like the thing I would look forward to the most, was playing that tournament and preparing for it during the school days and on the weekdays. And like that was like the main attraction. I spent all week thinking about that. And it wasn't because I wanted to be the best or like compete with the best or level up. It was just wanting to play the game. And it was not that easy to like go to the store and just find people sitting there playing like it is now. The second thing I want to say, just real quick, sorry, this is like a very abrupt tangent in what you're saying, is like there's this false dichotomy between competitive Magic Pro and everybody else, where people might feel like Sam Black is never going to want to play Commander. Sam Black doesn't know what casual Magic is. Sam Black is not this. Like, that's not really true, because I think you can actually be in this, is it Venn diagram or concentric circle, where like you can enjoy competitive Magic and be good at it, but also enjoy other ways to play Magic. I just want to call that out real quick.
Yeah, no, I mean, and like, when I talk about like playing with my friends and like playing at the youth center, like all the stuff that wasn't actual tournaments when I was a kid, we were just like playing, multiplayer games like free for alls and stuff. And like, I grew up playing like really political games of like multiplayer Magic. And like, so when everyone's just like, how can you play Commander? Like, doesn't like the politics like just kind of ruin the game? I'm like, no, I'm about that stuff. Like, that's what I
grew up on that.
with. And
Yeah.
I like, even like through college, like I was mostly playing like multiplayer, like in the dorms. I play tournament Magic not because I prefer two player, but just because that's the more Magic that I can play. Um, and yeah, like given that I've been successful in competition, people are surprised when I say that I'm not a competitive person. Like I've talked to people who like, they're really into like being the best and like defeating people in a direct competition, and like take losses really hard because like the outcome matters so much to them. And I'm just not like that. Like, losing doesn't really phase me. It doesn't affect my like the result of a tournament doesn't really affect my like mood or anything. And my drive has like in like the pro circuit was always, I just want to be there, and like I need to do this well to get to keep being here. So like I care a lot about like earning qualifications to things I'm not already qualified for. And I don't even care what the thing is, but like if I have to like qualify to play in it and it's like another thing, like that's more Magic I can play. I want to get to be there. But if there's like a tournament that's like just a cash tournament that doesn't qualify for something else, it's like, whatever. This one doesn't matter so much, because like it's still like fun to win anything, but it's not that big of a deal. And so like, yeah, a lot of like, like when I was on the Pro Tour, I was going to like every Pro Tour and every Grand Prix, because that was a way to play a lot of Magic, and because it would ensure that I kept, being able, being in the room where it happens.
Yeah. But this is something that I'm intensely curious about, Sam, because when I speak to folks who are more competitive minded in Magic, they had to very intentionally work at leveling up. And it takes a very particular kind of person to basically lose a lot in the beginning stages of their career and lose to a lot of better players. It sounds like your path might have been a little different. I mean, is it just that you're such a natural at it that you just leveled up, or like what was like, I guess what's the foundational level up process for
So
you to
everyone
get to
says,
that pro tour?
right. So like everyone says the way to get better is to play with people who are better than you. And I always wanted to do that, but I also just didn't have like access when I was like a kid. Like you couldn't just go online because that didn't exist until I was in college. Like the internet did, but like Magic Online didn't. And I mean, I did actually just like go online. Like I played, Magic, like where I was like literally finding opponents in like AOL chat rooms and like sometimes playing on Apprentice, which is like the first like program for playing Magic on a computer, but it like didn't know the rules or anything. And sometimes literally just like, all right, well, I have a deck that's like on my desk in front of me, and I'm gonna shuffle it up, and I'm just gonna like tell you what cards I'm playing, and you're just gonna trust that this is really happening. Um, and so like I did, some of that stuff when like Magic Online wasn't available, and like I couldn't play Paper Magic because it was late on a school night or whatever. But I like, I started playing with people who just like learned the game when I did, and they were smart kids who like were not bad at the game, but they weren't like taking it as seriously as I was. And then like I went to tournaments, and when I'm going to tournaments as like a 12 or 13-year-old, like there were people who were better than I was. I didn't really know if it was that they were playing the game better than me or if they just like owned good cards that I didn't own. But I didn't like have a car, and I was a kid, and I couldn't like make connections with them easily to like
Mhm.
uh like test more seriously. And I like started to hear about like people in my area who like worked together and took it seriously and stuff, but like I didn't have an in. um and so to get back a little bit to the question about like the time between when I started and like when I like got on the pro tour and stuff. So like I started before standard existed. So when there was only one kind of like competitive Magic, like vintage or whatever, but it wasn't called that because it was just Magic.
Mhm.
Um and any money I could get my hands on, like I didn't buy food from the time that I learned that Magic existed to many years later. Like
Okay. All
why
in
would
on
I
Magic.
like if I had money that I could like buy lunch with, I could also buy an actual dual land for a lunch. And like I want the dual land. And then once I had the dual lands, well, now I need the moxes. And then once I have those, like so like I ended up like getting like a full set of power and a full set of duels and stuff, like pretty early. I played in a like type 2 tournament, like literally the weekend that became a thing.
Mm.
Um, but as it like became a real thing rather than like this, weird structure for this one tournament, uh, and as like new cards came out, like I owned a a vintage deck, but I didn't own like, play sets of rares from new sets. And I didn't like have the money to get them. And so there was a long time where I was basically just like my collection didn't support playing like qualifier formats. Um and so like I knew that all that stuff was happening, and I would like go to like Gen Con or whatever, and like there would be people playing other formats, but I'd just like find the guys who were playing vintage and play with them.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until like Masks Block that I like got to a point where I could actually like put like deck that was of a qualifier format together and compete.
Sure.
And
Because of
so
your disposable income or because of your network or both, right?
Yeah, both really. And like, a lot of people who played around the ages that I did, like, came up in the JSS or whatever, but like I never heard of a JSS event while I was the right age. I don't know if like the stores in my area just like happened to not like be into it or what. Like
Right.
I didn't know. I literally have no idea where I could have done that ever. And yeah, so like I was there, but I just wasn't in a position to like get into the tournaments that happened. And then I like, yeah, so like around, like I top aided the second PTQ that I played in, which was Masks Block Constructed. And then I top aided like a few more Masks Block Constructed PTQs. Like I top aided a lot of PTQs from in like Mask Block, Invasion Block. And then I basically stopped playing during Odyssey Block because that was my first year of college. And then I played a lot the next 3 years in college, but I was like just playing a lot of like casual Magic and like drafting online and not really going to events. And then after college, I like moved to Madison and opened an LGS mostly so that I could play a ton of Magic. And
Hold on. I have to go into this. Like, you're basically saying that you had some sort of mystical, like, from not even having a play group with better players to top 8ing PTQs. Like, what happened? Like, you're either the most brilliant Magic player in the world, or you're just the most naturally intuitive player, or well, just all the things that you did like leading up to that helped you.
I mean, like I said, at all points I was like playing as much Magic as I could. And like, you know, early on, like the internet like didn't exist, and or like Magic strategy on the internet. Like,
yeah, it was so primitive.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
And so like early on, it was really just like come up with your own ideas and like test them against people. And like, you know, to the extent that I'm like a, you know, famous deck builder now or whatever, like that's when I grew up, like there wasn't.
You were always doing that. That's
like
what you're
deck
saying,
building
right?
is just required to play Magic. Like I couldn't at deck because that wasn't a thing. And so you know, like I guess that's to say, like I was always, you know, I just like was working on my fundamentals the whole time. And so, you know, I might not have had people who were like a lot better than me to play with, but I just played so much with the people who were a little worse than me. And that's like not as good, but it's like good enough to improve as opposed to not improving. And so yeah, I mean, like a lot of the success that I had in terms of like PTQ top 8s in the 90s was just like with like decks that I just built myself and like put a lot of like testing and tuning into and stuff. And you know, that continued with like my early like real competitive success. Like the first regionals that I won was with a, you know, really like wacky deck compared to like what other people were doing, where like the conventional wisdom at the time was very much, this was also 2006, was very much like, you know, you figure out like the 9 best cards and you play 4 of each of them. And I built this like Abzan Court of Calling deck that had like a core engine of like 4 Sensei's Divining Tops, 4 Court of Calling, and then like 4 Sakura Tribe Elders and 4 Wood Elves. So I had like all these ways to shuffle to like look for the cards that I wanted with Sensei's Divining Top. But then I had like 17 different singletons in my deck. And that was just like not how people built decks at that time. But like it made sense to me that I have like all this like optionality, and like as long as I like build a curve of cards that are like about as good as each other, then I'm like not giving much up to like gain a lot of like optionality and flexibility in like which cards I'm looking for with cord, which cards I'm like choosing to put on top with top, and like just make it very hard for my opponent to like know what stuff to like play around. And like if they start like playing around one thing, I have like this different angle that like wasn't what a deck that was presenting the one threat would like be able to like have as a backup.
I'm just having this look on my face because I'm still a little befuddled. Like, you didn't, like, when you're doing these things and building these decks, like, did you have a sounding board, like someone to tell you that this is in the right direction or not? Were there like buddies on AIM?
Who told me it was like really stupid.
Okay, yeah, so that makes it even more incredible then. Like how I mean how it sounds like everything you did was like self-taught and self-done, right?
Yeah, so I mean, um, so like I have a like a Discord right now, and the title of the Discord is challenging assumptions. And that's basically like I'm, a bit of a contrarian or whatever. Like, you know, uh, like to me, if something isn't like definitionally true, then it's not necessarily true.
Mhm.
And I think that there are a lot of like people are just really drawn to heuristics because they make things easier and they're usually right. And if my goal is to like find something exceptional, the easiest way to do that is to like look at all the heuristics and figure out where the exceptions would be and why, because that's how you're going to find something that other people aren't looking at, because like they've like ruled it out before even considering it. Um, and so I guess that's to say like yeah, like I guess it's kind of contrarian to just be like, well, my goal is step one, find conventional wisdom. Step two, actively look for exceptions. But like when so many people are working on a project, that's the way to find something that's correct that they missed.
Yeah.
They're looking everywhere that the heuristics point to.
I think what's incredible here, and obviously I'm gonna assume here that you're an experimenter or you experiment, you test, you find things that work. Probably more often than not, there are things that just don't work. They just get discarded. That's the whole point of ideation and
I've built
testing.
so many bad decks. Very few people have built as many bad
There's a
decks as I
hall of
have.
shame somewhere, but it doesn't need to be revealed
No, there's
because
no
that's just part of the
shame. There's no
process.
shame. Like you come up with an idea, you build a deck around it, you figure out which parts of it work and which parts of it don't, and then you take the stuff that works and you try it in a different shell. Like the aristocrats deck that Tom Martell won Pro Tour Gatecrash with, was basically like I had a testing team, but that one was basically just me in a lab in a house with a bunch of other people. But I was just like, all right, like okay, I think that like this like sacrifice shell is really good. I think like Falcon Wrath Aristocrat and Cartel Aristocrat with like Blood Artist is pretty good. Now, where am I getting the creatures to sacrifice and which creatures am I sacrificing? And I had like a build that was like, okay, we have some human synergies because like Doom Traveler is a way to like get an extra body. I had another build that was like vampire, or that was like zombies because like Gravecrawler is like a good creature that you can sacrifice and you can bring it back. And like to me, these were the same deck, but they had like wildly different like spells and mana bases. They're like 20 cards off from each other. Um, and I was just like, slotting in all these like different clusters and playing a bunch of different stuff in the space. And, like other people would kind of humor me and play games against it. And like some of the builds were like really bad. Like the one with zombies like wasn't fast enough to make up for the fact that your creatures basically couldn't block. And but like with each part it's just like, okay, which cards are working, what isn't, what are the like strengths and weaknesses of all these like different cards that exist that you can play. And just like, given that I've had to like be a deck builder from the beginning, you just get really good at quickly noticing like what's working and what isn't, and being able to like, rather than like, okay, I built this deck, it was bad, let's discard it, and go like, all right, what worked, what didn't, what can I salvage here, what other ideas do I have that I can like try to see if there's something here. um and so like my role on like testing teams for like every pro tour was basically like, I'm just gonna try a bunch of like wild stuff and figure out like what stuff is good and what stuff is bad for as long as I have until it's time to like register a deck. And then like a day before like deck reg, I'm like, okay, these are all the things that I liked. What can I find that like synthesizes this? And so like I've played a lot of decks at Pro Tours that were like, well, I put 2 or 3 weeks into like learning everything I can, not just about like the format as it exists, but like the card pool that is in the format. And now it's like pencils down, and I will play this deck that I built, 24 to 48 hours before the event.
Is it usually an audible, like a last 24 to
That's what I'm
48
saying. It's
hours?
not an audible in that I didn't have a previous plan. It's just like
Right.
the amount, like I know how much time I have to work, and I use that time to learn as much as I can. And then once I have run out of time to learn as much as I can, I like just kind of, synthesize it into a list that's like the best that I have from what I've learned.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and sometimes I'm like not sure about it, and sometimes I'm pretty confident about it. And then I just like tell other people like I'm playing this, but it's or like okay, I broke it, play this.
Okay. Uh, Being contrarian or going against conventional magic heuristics that may be comforting, right? That helps people sleep at night because they feel like they have a grasp on something. Like, is that basically was that born out of necessity, or is it just like where does that is it like a chip on one's shoulder? Like
I
where does
don't
that come
think
from?
so. I mean, like like I'm someone who like I remember in like first grade having an argument with a classmate about which one of us was weirder. Like, it's certainly some amount of just like I've very clearly never been similar to other people, such that like being a conformist was an option. And so I just like I guess the way that I could have any self-esteem was by assuming that like not doing things the way that other people did or being similar to other people was virtuous, because like otherwise I'm failing really badly. So let's just assume that like individuality is actually like really valuable, and that like unique ideas are valuable, and let's just like lean into that. And um so then from there it's just like okay, like I've said before that like the key to like being a good deck builder is hubris. Like you have to believe that you can come up with something better than like what other people have found, and then when you come up with something, you have to be willing to like actually register it in an event. And like both sides of that take a lot of hubris, and I have that. I just like people are often like look, all these people are playing this format. They've like come to this conclusion where like this was the best deck that exists. So like this is the deck you should play, or this deck is bad. Other people have probably tried it. No one's playing it, so it's probably bad. I'm just like, yeah, I think everyone's just copying off each other, and no one really understands anything. And like everyone's bad. A better thing exists somewhere. I just need to put work in and find it. Like when I started playing CDH, competitive commander, my approach wasn't let me like look up what the good decks are and like learn how to play those. It was I
It's more
assume
like
that,
first principles. Let me start from the
yeah, it's just like
foundations.
I assume no one in this space is like all that good, and they don't like know all the stuff, and like like just like people have to have missed things. Like the card pool is so large, and like people are so attached to the first things they learned that it's like, okay, well,
Mhm.
a new card came out. I bet no one's really tried to build around this new card. So let's just like see what it can do. And then once I started playing a little, it's like, okay, well, now I've like noticed these things about how I play the game that are different from how other people like approach, actually like using their resources in a game. And so now like I definitely don't want to like copy someone else's deck, because I want to build a deck that plays the kind of game I want to play.
Mhm.
And so that like there are a lot of cards that other people like use commonly that I just know aren't going to work with the way that I use my cards in a game. And like the fact that like most people have to copy existing decks because they don't know how to build a deck means that they're just like playing the cards that aren't suited to their playstyle, because they don't even know like what their playstyle is or how to choose cards that work well with it. Um, but like I understand magic enough that I can do all of that, so I'm going to do that instead of like copying a deck, because you just give up so much if you try to copy a deck rather than like building a deck that like uses cards that like I know are good, because I read them and other people like, I don't know, dismiss them,
Hmm.
and like using cards that like work for exactly the way that I play. Like I know that I use counter spells a little bit less aggressively than other people, and I sculpt my hand a little bit more, and I try to develop slower rather than faster because I want people to like use their resources answering threats that other people play early and are the most threatening things. Like I never want to be the most threatening. So like I don't want to play any rituals because those just like let me play a kind of game that I don't want to play. And I don't want to play like Wheel of Fortune type effects because the fact that I like use my cards really conservatively means that I'm really unlikely to have a small hand, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So just like knowing, oh, these would be good if I played like the same cards differently, but like I'm not going to do
Aligned
that.
to what you want to do, right? Obviously, the
Yeah,
cards need
like
to
you
be
build a deck
aligned to
to
your
have a plan. You
principles.
don't like, like to me, the plan comes first, and the cards let you execute that plan. Whereas other
Right,
people are just
right.
like, oh, this is the deck. How do I play it? Like,
This
I
is the
know.
deck. This is the cyborg guy. Let me start with this and
Yeah,
figure it out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I have like a different approach, but it's because I have like the luxury of having a different approach because I like have put in the work to like know more things than other people know, like know how to identify a play style, know what I'm doing differently than other people, know the cards that exist in Magic. Like,
Mhm.
I got into like pre-modern recently, and that's a format where like people don't build decks really. Instead, they just like update like old extended decks.
Yes.
And it's
There's a
like,
lot of some of that nostalgia factor, sure. Yeah.
right, well, some of it's nostalgia factor, but some of it's just like you have to like it's really hard to rely on Scryfall to build a deck because you can do some searches, but you don't know what you're looking for. Whereas if you just like know all of the cards in pre-modern, like they're just there, um, then you can go like, okay, I want to build a deck that uses this card well. Let's just mentally catalog every card that plays well with this kind of thing. Um, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yes. Well, easier maybe for certain minds such as yourself, maybe harder. I feel like you've already answered my next question, which I'm trying to ask is, which is maybe it's even going outside Magic. Why do you think people have so much difficulty thinking for themselves?
It's safer not to. So honest, okay, that's it, and it's big and ties back into the hubris thing. Um, I this is going to be seem like a weird starting point. I grew up in a pretty safe environment. My parents were really supportive. They didn't have like ideas about like what I should do with my life, and they were they would like any other kid they'd like ask what I wanted to do when I grow up, and they would like offer suggestions if I was like I don't really know, I don't know what the options are. There was a while where like my mom was like, I bet you would like being a neuroscientist. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is, but sure, maybe. Um, but it's not like, then she tried to like make that happen. It was just like, this seems like a job for like smart people who might be interested in how thinking works or whatever. And so um anyway, like just having like a coming from a pretty stable, safe environment, I had just like a very deeply internalized belief that whatever happened, I'd be okay. I was generally like not a very fearful person. And so having this like security net and whatever like makes it easy to experiment with things in a risk-free way. Like I'm a like big believer in like universal basic income because I think that it like lets people like follow their dreams and passions rather than like taking a like subsistence level job because like the risk of ruin if they like try to follow like their hobby and their passion, um they can't afford the risk that they won't get there. And I have made a career and a living off just like playing a game that I like started playing all the time before making a living off of it was like a thing that there was any reason to believe a human could do. Um, and I think that the world is such that like if you're good at literally if you're among the best at literally anything, there's a way to like monetize that and like for that to be your thing. And I think it's just like great to like let people like invest in themselves and their passions and like do a thing, whatever that thing is. Um, and so uh, I've lost exactly how I was tying this back. What was the question?
The question was, why do you think people are so
Right. Why are people?
incapable of critical thinking?
Yeah. And so I think a lot of it just comes from risk aversion, and people just like being in a place where taking risks in their life has been like more scary and dangerous, and like they've been in a position where they could be literally threatened. And risk aversion leads to following heuristics because like for safety. There's like it was expressed once and really resonated with me that the job of a parent isn't to give their kids like the best life, it's to give their kids the safest life. Like rule one is like protect them. And so kids will often be, trying to like optimize for a different thing than their parents are optimizing for. They like develop passions and interests and like get excited by things and like want to pursue that excitement. But like excitement sometimes leads to things that are like different or scary or unconventional. And getting into that space can come with some risk. And a lot of parents need to try to like mitigate that risk and like guide them towards something safer. And so, like, as kids, people are taught to follow heuristics and follow tradition and conventional wisdom and, all those conservative values. And because like my mom is an artist, my dad's a jazz musician, so they were not doing the like traditionally safest things. My
Sure, they
mom,
were not neuroscientists. Let's put it
right?
that way.
Yeah, and so like my mom's family had some money. Like her dad came to America to like escape World War II. He's Jewish. She like came here and like worked super hard and like started a factory by his bare hands or something, as far as I can tell from the stories. And like
Sure, self-made. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and like was like successful and had the mindset that like he didn't necessarily want his kids to have a life that was anything like his, especially given the history of like fleeing from a war-torn country or whatever. He wanted to just like provide for his family and like give them a better life, like typical American dream immigrant type situation. And he managed to like be successful at that and have kids that like so he and his wife were just like really supportive about their kids like following their passions, and he could provide for them. And so that's how I ended up having a mom who was like an artist. And so like my whole extended family was really into just do whatever you want.
Hmm.
And so that meant that like my background involved a lot less really instilling like the value of tradition and heuristics and safety.
So you think people uh, tend to follow more heuristics due to fear or due to loss aversion? Like heuristics, like
Yes,
get a
but
9 to 5
also
job, get a
subconsciously, I
stable.
think it's more about like you learn the habits that you're supposed to trust the conventional way of doing things because the convention exists for a reason and it's dangerous not to. And when that's just like how you've grown up approaching life, it can like spill into other areas regardless of whether it's the optimal strategy.
Hmm. And you mentioned also something which is just leaning into the fact that you're weirder or you're special or
Yeah.
you're an individual, you're unique, you're one of one. That must have had its challenges when you were younger, right? Because I'm just thinking even back to my childhood, just like, you
Yeah,
know,
no, other kids don't
being
really like
bullied,
that.
right? Because I was different, or I was like perceived to be a smart person, you know. So what was that like growing up in
Yeah,
that
no,
way, just being you?
kids really like to enforce conformity in their groups and figure out in groups and out groups, and try to be with people who they like pattern matches similar to them. I wouldn't say that I like got along well with kids as a child. Like I grew up vegetarian, and like that was a thing that was different, and so it was like a thing I was picked on a lot for as a kid. And like I grew up with like really strong feelings about like uh the absurdity of like gender roles as a thing, and um like I don't know, like pretty big like distaste slash like chip on my shoulder for the way in which people like took for granted the acceptability of enforcing like roles on people as a function of like the like sex that they were born. Like um the long discussion about gender being a social construct, and like nothing about like that social construct following in a way that's like particularly meaningful or necessary from biology. And so anyway, like basically just as a way to be like, I don't like this, I would like people to like question things more. Like I had like long hair and nails like as a kid, just to be like, these rules are stupid, can we not? um and so yeah, I would say that there were certainly parts of childhood that were like hard due to like refusal to conform, but that also plays back into how I got here, where it's like, well, magic is a place where like I can find some common ground with people, and have like a way to like interact with people in a friendly way over like a shared interest, that like was hard to like get without that, right? Like I wanted to like go to magic tournaments to like meet people to play in person, possibly because like I didn't have another way to meet people who would be friendly to me.
Mhm. Yeah. I think there's something very pure in your life and magic arc, because I feel like to a lot of people, maybe even including myself, magic is an activity or it's a hobby, and it is for everybody. I think it is for you as well to some extent. But the way you described your relationship to the game, it's almost like magic is just a manifestation of extension of who you are. Like I feel like when people ask you questions like, why do you choose to brew, or why do you choose to be unorthodox? It's almost a flawed question, because that's just how you were from the beginning. There's no other way. Whereas I feel like for a lot of magic players, there's less of that self-expression or manifestation. So if they're going to play in a pro tour, they will just pick what they think is the best deck or the highest probability deck, due to various reasons. You mentioned, uh, you know, I would call it ego sometimes too. Just
Sure.
the fear of
Yeah, or
being
just like
looking stupid is
competitiveness,
also
like like yeah, like people. I mean, the a competition has very clear objectives and a very clear framework. Like it tells you you're supposed to try to win, and then like it's very easy to conclude that the way that it's most likely, the thing that you can do that makes it most likely to win is play the best deck. What's the best deck?
right.
Well, everyone agrees it's this. Okay, this is pretty straightforward. Yeah.
It's like I need a Lamborghini. Why do I need a Lamborghini? I don't know. Somebody told me I need one. Okay, how do I get a Lamborghini? Make a lot of money. How do I make a lot of money? Become a banker. Okay, how do I become a banker? Go to college and study it or whatever. Right?
Right.
It's there's these preset paths almost. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, that's I'm not really into those. Um, I'm into like learning about myself and knowing what I like and what I value, and figuring out how to get as much of that as possible. Um,
Yeah,
like the challenging assumptions thing is, I'm very serious about it.
right. That
My,
is you.
my life is very, like, all of my decision making and like values and everything are very much like built from the ground up, like what actually matters to me. Um, and like, for example, over, well, over COVID, I, diligently quarantined and just like stayed in my house and started like streaming. And then as that started ending, I like took a like job in game design and moved out to California. And uh, but when I did that, I didn't want to like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't know if I wanted to like actually move into game design or like just try it out. And so I didn't want to give up the foothold that I had in content creation and streaming either. So I was like, okay, I'll go out there and I'll like work during the day and then stream at night and like maintain both of these things.
Keep your options open. Sure.
Yes. And so the result of that was that I didn't have time to like make any connections or like have a life in California.
Yeah, that's the
And
downside. Yeah.
uh then I really hated that. Um, and so as it got to the point where I was like, I shouldn't be here. I want to leave. The main thing that I imagined that I wanted to do when I left was I wanted to cook dinner for my friends every Friday. Which is maybe a weird conclusion to come from. But I mentioned my mom's family is Jewish. And while I didn't grow up with this, later in her life, my mom started like having Shabbos dinners for her friends, where like every week she would cook and have like a dozen people over for dinner. And when I was in the area, I would like go to those, and I was just like, oh, this is like such a great thing to do. Like, these are so fun, and like it makes so many people happy, and this is just like such a like cool thing to build into your life. And then after, several years of isolation, I was like, I need to like put effort into like building and fostering a community, and like, you know, giving something to like, show my friends how important they are to me. And so I left California, moved back to Madison, and now I am like back in my condo with a giant table, and I can uh, devote, all of my like every Friday to spending the day cooking, in the evening having people over, and thanking them for uh, the privilege of their company.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I don't remember what exactly led to that. I guess that was about identifying something that was valuable to me, and just like
Sure.
going, prioritizing that and prioritizing making space for it, and saying like, okay, I'm going to stream, but I'm not going to stream on Fridays, and I'm not going to like book like coaching session on Fridays, because like I have identified this like ritual as a valuable part of my life.
Yeah. I think it's a sort of, I just said a few minutes ago, you are who you are. I mean, we all are who we are. But I am also wondering, I think regret is too strong a word, but are there any considerations for forks in the road, like how your life and career might be different had you focused more on game design, focused more on magic, focused more on streaming? It's easy for me to ask this question, obviously, because hindsight is 2020, but is are you just designing your life to have a lot of optionality, and you work on this thing here and there and this thing here and there, you're playing CEDH and you're testing competitive formats and you're drafting? Like, is
Yeah.
there any thought as to what my career or my progression would have been like had I just gone all in on one thing?
So I mean, mostly like there aren't a lot of regrets because like I'm good. Like I'm in a place that I'm happy with, so there's
You
not a
made it
lot to
work.
be
Sure.
unhappy about.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of it is like, well, you know, it's always just like, well, I've gone as hard as I knew how to on the opportunities that I had. Like uh when like I've always like when I was, you know, before I was playing Magic professionally, I was always I didn't turn down any opportunities that I was aware of that would have given me a chance to do it more or earlier. I just like made the best that I could with the resources that were available to me. And like getting into game design, like I suppose technically there were some times where I like turned down potential opportunities to like work at Wizards, but it was like while I was like platinum in the Pro Tour, and it just like didn't make sense to like stop doing the thing that I was doing then to do the other thing, because like, you know, they're both dream jobs, but like I had one of them. And it's like, well, I could switch, which would have the advantage of locking in a situation that's like a little bit more stable, but also the like competitive player dream job gives me like an unbelievable amount of like flexibility in my day-to-day life. Like I need to be in like these certain places for tournaments a few times a year. I need to put a lot of like total time into preparing for tournaments, but any given day, any given week, I could take off and be anywhere. And uh, that was like I grew up as a game player. Every game, the best strategy is to maximize your optionality.
Hmm.
And so, like, it's really hard for me to commit to anything because what am I gaining? Like, I'm losing options for what? Um,
Hmm.
and so, I mean, like, my partner and I have been together for 20 years. We're not married, and our relationship has like changed a lot over that time. And I absolutely believe that we will always be in each other's lives, in a very serious way. But also not in a way that like limits either of our options in the rest of our lives in any way. And that's an example of how I do things.
Right. Just your
And
philosophy, right? How to live. Yeah.
yeah. um and yeah, so the times when I've had the opportunity to go further into game design, the opportunity cost in terms of flexibility was just too high. Um, there have been times later where, like, you know, I wasn't in the same situation. Like, Magic wasn't as profitable, right? Like after the pandemic, when like there aren't like pro levels, and like Star City used to pay very well for like articles, and with the way that like the Magic infrastructure has changed, there aren't really buyers for articles at that rate anymore. And so like while there are different opportunities for monetization in the Magic content creator space now, I'm certainly like, you know, it a lot of the skills that are most relevant for Magic content create for like monetizing Magic content creation aren't skills that I have. Like, you know, I think if I wanted to make a lot of money on Magic content creation, I'd want to be really good at video editing and really good at figuring out how to like go viral on TikTok or whatever. And I'm not really looking to like learn that stuff because that sounds like it doesn't involve just playing Magic. Um, and uh,
True.
so, um, you know, right now I'm just like, I don't know, making less money than I used to or than I would if I like had a job at Wizards. But I also, you know, get by. Like I can do all the things that I want to, so it doesn't really matter. Um, and So, but I mean, there have been times where it was like, you know, working on Magic is really fun and would be really satisfying. And, you know, there have been times when I've like, I've tried to, you know, get hired by Wizards on and off at various times, and it hasn't worked out.
You contracted for them from time to time, as I
Yep.
understand.
Yep. And so, you know, I would say I asked them to work for them more recently than they asked me to work for them, or I asked if I could work for them more recently than they, you know, currently the no is on them. And you know, there are ways in which I've like been sad about that, but I don't know that things would actually be better. Like the cost of structure is very high, and my satisfaction doing the things that I'm doing now is pretty high. So I don't know. It's fine. I think like I've said before that like a lot of the best things that happened to me were failure to do something that I shouldn't have done. Like
Failure to conform.
well, no. I'm saying like when I tried to do something and I failed, where like I was actually trying to.
Oh,
like,
that's when you learned where you.
well, no, it's so like for example, right before I like was able to play Magic professionally, I like applied for like a normal like office job and didn't get it. And like if I had gotten the job, then like I wouldn't have been able to like uh pursue the option to play Magic. Like it wouldn't have been an acceptable risk once I had already been established. And there's no question in my mind that my life would be way worse if I had like been like working that job instead. And like I'm very happy with like where I went to college, but it was, you know, like my sixth choice, not my first choice. And like I don't know, it would be easy for a person in my position to you know, believe in like a higher power, that everything happens for a reason. In practice, I just believe that I'm good at making the best of a situation and playing to my outs and working with the resources available to me, and you know, all those good gamer skills.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very lucky because you make your own luck, and the way to be lucky is to like actually pursue, to notice and pursue opportunities as they present themselves, and to like be able to, you know, creatively problem solve and or use the resources that are available. Uh, and yeah, just, you know, see things and know what to do with them.
Is satisfaction or happiness the goal?
Yeah.
Ongoing goal?
I mean, I it's hard to believe that either of those cannot be among the most valuable things for almost anyone. There are, you know, as I said earlier, if something's not definitionally true, it's not true. I'm sure that there are people who just like have like deeply held morals that they should prioritize other things more than that. I've uh, had conversations with people who like, you know, legitimately believe in like the value of hard work and sacrifice. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, what's the virtue of sacrifice? Like, no one cares what you put into something. Like, no one cares about your input. Only you experience that. People care about your output. They care about what you produce. That can affect someone else. So, like, if you value sacrifice, like, you're just hurting yourself. Because, like, you know, it's the like work smart, not work hard or whatever. Like, if you it's just thinking about everything backwards to think about the thing that's valuable is putting a lot of work in rather than the thing that's valuable being getting a lot of output. And but there are people who do that, I guess is what I'm saying. So people can value whatever they happen to have learned to value. For me, happiness and satisfaction seem like pretty good ones to value. It's hard to go wrong when you're happy and satisfied.
Are you cynical in general about humankind or
No,
where the world is
absolutely not. I think that every like major system is flawed to the point of like catastrophically bad. Like, you know, systems are somewhere between amoral and evil depending on how you view things. And like, you know, it takes a sick kind of person to want to have enough power to like want power enough to like pursue it, to like become a world leader or whatever. Um, and so like the systems really like are built to like optimize for, there are a lot of perverse incentives. And it would be really easy to be kind of like pessimistic and fatalistic about the prospects of the world when you think that like every system for like governing humans is kind of like necessarily disastrous. But that's always been the case, and humanity collectively has always improved. And so like despite the fact that like everything is necessarily bad, it's not necessarily so bad that it's not workable. And while systems in a lot of ways exist to erase morality, like diffusion of blame, ethical consumption under capitalism, all that, like people individually are generally pretty like well-meaning and altruistic, and that there's a tremendous amount of like capacity for and presence of good in the world. And you know uh the evidence that I have is when you factor all that in, the outcome is like growth and compassion and happiness exists in the world and continues to like move in a good direction over the long term. And I have every reason to believe that for the most part that'll continue.
So there might be some individual outliers like sociopathic people wanting to become world leaders, but that's the exception.
Yeah.
And in the aggregate, there's still optimism.
Yeah.
Do you think of your magic career, or do you? First of all, the first question is: do you think of your magic career like? Do you think there is such a thing as a magic career? And if so, how do you want other people to think of Sam Black's magic career?
If there's not a magic career, I'm in trouble. uh, I mean, like my focus and income have been entirely magic for the last, I don't know, I guess there was a year in there that wasn't that, but like
2 decades.
Yeah, close. And so like if there's not a magic career, then you're working on a very specific definition of career, and like that's cool, I guess. But like as far as colloquially
Well,
using
let's just call it a body of work then. Yeah,
Sure.
there is a body of work. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if your question is, does a magic body of work exist? Yes. As to like, how do I want people to think of mine? I don't know. I mean, so like my so kind of the like meaningless way to put it is, what do you care about? Oh, happiness and satisfaction. Because those are just so nebulous. Like different people get those in different ways. My actual like goals as I conceptualize them, that is like a little bit more concrete and practical, are on an emotional level. The like biggest drive that I have is to show off. I want to be admired and appreciated for the ways in which I'm exceptional. And that last part is as important as the first part. Like I specifically like, it doesn't just matter that like I'm appreciated. It's more satisfying to be appreciated for the specific things that I like and value and are value about myself, and those are the things that are most unique and exceptional. And so a lot of the reason that like I am interested in like going out of my way to create content regardless of like whether I'm particularly being paid for it is just like, oh well, I can make something that people will appreciate, and then they'll like admire that I could do this thing. I made a thing that was valuable to them, and they'll like that, and only I would have made that thing, and so that's the thing that's exceptional. Because other people would have done something a little bit different.
Mhm.
Like the reason that I got into my limited podcast was I was like, I have an idea for how this can be done differently than other people do it that I think is going to be valuable, and I think people will appreciate it. Um, and then aside from that, I just want to like improve the lives of people close to me in particular. And like um, it's not quite the question that you asked, but a question that I thought that you might have been asking was, like, what is the value, like the social value of being like a Magic player, right? Like, um, a job like, uh, arguably the reason that gambling is outlawed when it is that it has negative social outcomes. That even if people only do it in healthy ways, or it's mostly like advantage gamblers, or like the reason that you shouldn't even allow advantage gamblers to do it is that like it's gambling is pretty zero sum, and
Mhm.
arguably the whole thing is like parasitic, and specifically like preying on like it's smart people preying on people who have gambling addictions and like problems.
Mhm.
And there are ways to create value in like the poker world, and I don't mean to imply that like everyone who plays poker is like doing something immoral. But it's easy for like any gaming position to be seen similarly. Like I enter tournaments that are zero sum and try to get mine.
Yeah,
Um,
somebody's winning, somebody's losing, right?
right. Uh, but like winning Magic tournaments isn't really what my job is. Magic
Mhm.
tournaments are a vehicle to test my theories and to like get my name out there. But like my job is educating people about Magic, and in that way, my profession is basically teacher, but I reach a wider audience. And then there's like, but the role of a teacher is to like give people like important skills, and you're just like teaching them
The
how to
tools.
like do this thing that like is zero sum. So how does it help the world if some people are better at Magic? And like to me, Magic skills are cross applicable to more or less everything. um, I think that that's true of almost everything. I think that like if you're great at literally anything, then you like kind of see the world through analogies to the thing that you're an expert in. Um, but I also think that you don't need to be an expert to like be able to apply things that you know from one space to another space. And I've kind of always believed that like gaming is kind of the best way to teach people like strategic thinking as a concept, problem solving, like a whole host of like really, really valuable, like how to think type skills are, as far as I know, best taught through gaming.
Mhm.
And so I view like I have a pretty like noble view of like the role of a like magic strategy educator, where like I think that uh, learning to like think about the world the way that is useful to think about Magic is just a valuable thing for people. And so, in terms of like how I view my contributions to the world or my audience or whatever, I like to think that I'm helping people just become better thinkers, whether that's about strategic thinking, or realizing which heuristics you should be questioning, and like generally having like a more um like taking less for granted. um
Mhm.
uh I guess that's what I think is ultimately like the most valuable work that I do.
Right. So really like getting a certain result for you individually in a tournament, or writing, I shouldn't say writing, but like competing, it's a means to an end. The end is to educate, is to provide some sort of value to others, to help them think critically, like to give them tools for Magic
Certainly
and otherwise.
the end goal of my profession is that. Um, like I think that it is, uh, like like I said, the end goal in my life is really just to like improve like the people close to me. The end goal in my profession is where like I care is like my profession cares about a wider range of people than I personally care about, because a
Of
lot of
course,
people who
yeah.
consume my content, like I don't know them. So it's very hard for me to like see that it's helping them. I can know that it's helping them
Mhm.
more than I can observe it. And I like value that both conceptually and practically in terms of like, oh, well, if people, value the contributions that I'm doing, that's like where my income comes from. Um, but there to me is a little bit of a divide between, personal ambitions and priorities and professional and, career ambitions and priorities. And they're largely in line, but like applied slightly differently into slightly different groups.
Mhm. Are there any particular teaching moments or magic moments in general that you're particularly proud of or fond of, or you'll look back and be like, that's where I made a mark?
Um, the first that I think of as a concrete moment is a little bit outside of magic. And by a little bit, I mean just outside of magic. There was a while about a decade ago where I started writing just like some thoughts and stories about like my life and how I experiences I've had and how I do things and stuff like on Facebook that ended up like uh I like announced that I was doing it, but it was like in like a private Facebook group that I like let anyone in. And For a while after like I wrote that stuff, people would like come up to me at events and like say that it had like a profound impact on them in some way. Like someone told me that like they like changed majors and like entered like gender studies because of like reading that. Um and Also just like it was pretty, like a decade ago, the magic like landscapes and demographics and stuff were like pretty significantly different than they are now. It was, I think, like giving awareness to some things that like the community as a whole didn't have a lot of awareness to back then was valuable. Um, uh, a lot of that's kind of like, um, so like my partner is trans, and so some of that was about like writing about like coming to understand that thing through them. And like this was before there were like any prominent magic players who were trans. And so kind of like I ended up effectively like introducing that like whole concept to like a number of magic players who just like hadn't encountered it. And these
Mhm.
days I think that like my voice is a lot less relevant in that space because there are people who, have that experience personally and can speak for themselves. But like there was, a time when there just weren't people in the space to do that, and it was, I think, meaningful to some people to be able to like scratch the surface there. Um, and As far as like magic, I mean, there are a few like articles that I'm proud of in terms of their ability to like uh, express like principles that I think should be, it's always nice to write like an evergreen piece, like something that's like
Yeah.
gonna create
A
like
classic,
some,
right?
yeah, a
Yeah.
classic, something that creates like some core strategy rather than like here's how to build, berries this particular week or whatever. And there are a few of those, but like I don't know that I don't think they're life changing.
Mhm. What about just helping folks on their way? Because I mean, I can't claim to have followed all of your tournament career, but even just breaking archetypes and allowing other folks to become successful due to ideas that you brought into the world. I can think of maybe Modern Horizons draft being
Right. Yeah.
one
Yeah.
of
No, I
them,
mean,
maybe the aristocrats.
certainly there are
Yeah.
people who, come up to me and say like, "Oh, you built this deck that I really loved." And about half of the time I actually built the deck. Sometimes it's a deck that, just ended up getting credited to me in their mind for some reason.
Mhm.
Um, but and then I mean, like, there are like I've had a lot of, different like roommates or people who were close to me or something throughout the years. And weirdly enough, there's like a pretty high correlation in what I've experienced between like people living with me for a while and like getting way better at Magic for some reason. And
Uncanny.
and so it's, I mean, it's always fun to like see that happen where like I find someone who's like interested in Magic but like hasn't had success, and like spend more time around them and like watching them like get a lot better is, fun and rewarding. And that's more, the thing that I was saying about having like the more personal goal of like improving the lives and situations of the people really close to me. So like being able to kind of like give my skill set to people who like hang out with me, and then like watch them use that to like succeed at stuff that they've wanted to succeed at is, definitely fun and satisfying.
Okay. So what is it? What does the road ahead look like? Is it going to be the same as it's been for the last couple years? Like, because I think Magic the game itself is also changing. Um, how tough question to answer, but have you given some thought as to what the next few years would be like in terms of you and your relationship to Magic, in terms of content?
It's been the same for the last 30 years. I don't see it changing.
Okay.
Like as much as
These little blips that don't. Yeah. Okay.
like,
I see where you're coming.
as much as I prioritize optionality, looking back on it historically, you'd think that I'm like the worst person to prioritize optionality this much because I change so much less than other people. Like there's just this one thing that I've always done and always wanted to do.
Other people all change and I stay the same, right? Kind of
Like,
as the joke goes.
all of my priorities just feel like they're all the same that they were when I was 11. Like, I've certainly like grown and changed and learned things, but like so much of like my like, I'll have friends who like I don't see for 6 years. And it's like, what's up? And they're like, oh, I had like all these radical changes. What's up with you? And it's like, same old. Like, I like at its core, like my life now isn't visibly different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's, it's weird that for someone who's so stable, I refuse to just like lock it in and be like, okay, this is what I do. um, I care a lot about like the flexibility to do something else, but that doesn't mean I think I'm going to start taking advantage of it anytime. Like I've only lived in the like tiny box between Chicago and Madison. Like I've spent, weeks or months in other places, but like permanent residence has only been there except for the 11 months that I was in California and I hated it. Um, like, I'm very me. And I don't think that's gonna really change.
Excellent. Yeah, so I think on that note, it's just great for having a chance to talk to you today, Sam. I feel like I've had just a very strong sense that you are who you are. I think I've said this like 3 or 4 times already on the podcast, but just your individuality and self-expression really shines through. You have a very clear way of how you want to define and live your life, and I think that is very admirable. And although we are all incapable of just packing up our bags one day and becoming somebody else, I feel like hopefully there's some inspiration here for others, or maybe just some reminders, right? Just think for yourself, right? Be your own individual. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I would certainly say, I mean, I certainly like. It's always hard to give advice because everyone's coming from very different situations, and I'm very aware of survivor bias. I know that anytime anyone asks like Finkel about like what he would recommend for other people, it's like, well, don't expect that you're gonna be able to just like choose to like live the life that he did because he's the guy who got luckiest, happened to be like the most talented or whatever. And other people aren't in the same spot. But you know, like I said, I think if you are really passionate about anything, you can probably get exceptional at it. And if you're exceptional at anything, there's a path to monetization and a way to like live your life around that thing. And you know, it would be nice if more people could afford to take the risks necessary to live the lives they want. And I would say, you know your own risk tolerance and you know risk factors. But like, if you're not doing the thing that you want to be doing, you should know that there's like. I hope you know a good reason that you're not.
Thank you for listening to Humans of Magic. You've made it to the end. Thanks so much. You're awesome. If you'd like to support the show, there are 2 ways to do so. The first way is the most powerful. Tell a friend. Tell them to check out Humans of Magic. I'd love it if you could spread the word. The second way is to join the Humans of Magic Patreon at patreon.com/humansofmagic. Patreon is the best way to directly support the show from a financial perspective. For as little as $2 a month, you can support me and join the Discord. It gives me the power to keep cranking out new episodes with your favorite magic people. If you want to go the $5 support route, you'll get a digital copy of the Humans of Magic book. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you, as always, making it all the way to the end, and we'll see you next time.